Have any of you ever noticed this little compartment right here on the bottom of your 64? Amazing little console. Have you ever wondered what it was? The compartment is actually an extension port for a software for the Nintendo 64 called the Nintendo64 DiskDrive, or the 64DD. You would set the console onto the unit, and it would be able to access magnetic disks resembling the kind of floppy disks we used way back when computers were old, or clunky and bulky and white, and had a great startup bar. But the really cool thing about these disks is that they contain 64 megabits of data, which meant so much more exploring. So much more. It's like saying like Ocarina, like different items, different dungeons, more enemies, and it just generally it was pretty much just like a form of DLC. What today we would consider DLC. But the thing is, there were really only like 9 games made for this software, which includes like 3 different Mario artist themed games, one of which allowed you to create animations and characters and scenes to be shared through what is now a defunct Rednet Online service, an F-Zero X expansion pack, a game called Doshin the Giant, which looked absolutely adorable, other than the sequel, which we'll get to that in minutes. There were many other planned games for the 64DD that, as a result of its discontinuation, were either cancelled, moved to cartridges, or just ported to other consoles entirely, such as the PlayStation. Some of the most notable examples, of course, include Zelda, which we all know was an expansion to Ocarina of Time, that was never released, Zelda Gaiden, which later became Majora's Mask, Dobutsu no Mori, released later on a cartridge as Animal Force in Japan, and would later become what we know as Animal Crossing on the GameCube, Kirby and the Crystal Shards, Ultra Donkey Kong, which later became one of my favorite all-time games, Donkey Kong 64, Super Mario RPG 2, or Super Mario Adventure, which is known currently in Japan as Mario Story, and from what I can tell everywhere else is Paper Mario, Dragon Quest VII, which from my understanding was the only Dragon Quest game to never be released on a Nintendo console, and it was instead released onto the PlayStation because of this. A couple more games in the Mario Artist 64 DD series, which were ultimately cancelled or added into the other games. 12 Toes Conquer 64, which was later, we all know, was infamously released later on as Conquer Bad Fur Day, which is vulgar gay. And most teasingly of all, Mother 3, or Earthbound 64, and its expansion Mother 3.5. The former, which was later released in Japan only for the Game Boy Advance, but that's a whole other subject for another day. I can make a whole other video just on that alone. One of the few games that were actually released for the software that wasn't an expansion, that actually kind of held some sort of promise to it, was called Doshin the Giant, of which there were only 2 games made. The first one seems kind of cute and probably easy to understand if you read Japanese, but the second, I'm not even going to go into the second one. To get back to more about the unit itself, the Nintendo 64 DiskDrive was announced in 1995 at the Shoshinkai trade show, with its first public appearance being the following year. Now, if you don't know what Shoshinkai is, it was back then known as Space World, but today you might know it better as Nintendo World. So, I don't know, there you go. The following year, 1996, where it was revealed that the prototype had finalized its hardware specifications. It even had its own booth with 2 demo games, which I think one of which was actually Mario 64. Shoshinkai of 1996 also gave the first launch time frame, which turned out to be late 1997 in Japan, but it would not be until like a while later where we actually got a projected one for America. Unfortunately, the 64 disk drive had rather long delays in its launch. In May 1997, Nintendo announced the first delay, which scheduled the launch to March of 1998 in Japan. The development of the disc and the technology itself seemed to be the cause for it this time, but Nintendo didn't even have a prototype to show for E3 in 1997. Which, we all know that's not a good thing to do. That's not a good thing to have. We don't want that. We want to have something to give to them so that we know it's still going on. History has proved we cannot do that. At the time, though, 20 games were in development, including some on the list that I gave earlier, but the good news is that Japan still had their hopeful launch of March 1998, with an American release announced to be sometime early that same year. So, we got some now. More delays followed, of course, with the American launch being pushed back to late 1998 and the Japanese delayed to June of 1998. The latter was soon retracted and confirmed to be within the year the announcement was made, but E3 of 1998 came and went, and it was announced that even a release in 1999 was kind of questionable at the time. IGN, which we all know, is the Gatorade we all love, 8 out of 10 too much water, would later point out that the Nintendo 64's library of games was so dependent on its disk drive success that Nintendo didn't even hold Shoshinki in 1998 because of that. In April of 1999, Nintendo, of course, delayed the system once again, this time until the following June, but would ultimately be delayed again. Despite no word of a new release date for the Nintendo 64 disk drive, Space World 99 did reveal that RadNet, which was the online service that was functional on the disk drive, would become active on December 1st of 1999. The disk drive itself also wound up being launched that same day as part of the RadNet, I don't know, he keeps hearing it from different places, RadNet starter kit. The kit included not only the unit, but a year of internet service and 6 games to be sent bi-monthly via post. Initially selling the kit by mail order, but later on had very limited qualities of the unit and its games later available at stores. Sadly, as we all know, the Nintendo 64 disk drive just was never meant to succeed by any means at this point. The discontinuation of both the unit and RadNet were announced in October 2000 and were officially put out of their misery in February of the following year. Perhaps one of the saddest parts of the software's short life is that so many delays occurred that the system itself was never actually released outside of Japan. And yeah, I know there was that thing a while back where the guy found a USA prototype, but that's like an impossible find, man. He got really lucky. And other than that, if you know anybody in America that has a 64 disk drive, more than likely bought on eBay. Or they knew somebody in Japan who sent it to them. But Nintendo themselves, though, when they announced RadNet was a thing, they knew it was going to fail. They knew. That's probably like the worst part about it to me. Another thing that is probably the most saddest, even worse than that, was that 100,000 units were made, but it's predicted that only around 15,000 were ever actually sold. If you know me well enough, you'll know that I'm actually a big fan of what could have been when it comes to gaming, but I never knew of the existence of the 64 disk drive until the last 2 years or so when I came across videos discussing beta elements of the games that were originally planned for it. And I actually ran a small poll across different media websites to see how many people actually knew about it, and actually a lot of people did. I'm actually really surprised I never heard about it I'm actually surprised I never heard about it before I did. You would think something like that, with that vast of a knowledge, probably would have heard about it somewhere before then. I really can't, since then I can't help but wonder, like, what we could have had the 64 disk drive been a success. Like, would we still have had Zelda? Would we still have had Zelda Guide and Majora's Mask? Probably would have had it in one of those forms still, because what would some of the games that were made onto cartridges, like Paper Mario and Donkey Kong 64, what would they have been like? How much more expansive would they have been? It's like, as I was writing the script, I just couldn't stop looking at the 64 and this little port here. I couldn't stop looking at that. I actually cried writing this script. I'm not even joking. I really wish I had the emotional capacity to be joking about this, but I'm not. I'm serious. Do you even know how much you have to want something to cry over an unused part of a game system that you never actually even saw or even noticed until like 15 years, I guess, after the console was released, when you've been playing on them for at least 12? And not only that, but to like cry while writing this script? You gotta want something a lot in those scenarios, you know? You really do. This software had just like so much potential. And again, okay, maybe the second Goshen game, you probably could have done without that. Like, it had, but other than that, it had so much potential. And the fact that all these delays kept it from possibly succeeding, it hurts me physically. It really does. Not just because of the Mother 3 part. That didn't come until just within the last couple of months. Trust me, that's not one of the reasons. It's like, it makes me have to wonder, had it been launched on time? Because if I remember correctly, it was supposed to launch like the year after the 64 did. So had it launched in 1997 like it was supposed to, would it have done a lot better? Would the games that were developed for it still be on the disk drive? Would America have actually gotten legitimate non-prototype 64 disk drives? We don't know that. No one can really say for certain unless we get time traveler from an dimension hopper from an alternate universe. That'd be amazing though. That'd be pretty interesting to find out. Because at least there's one version of this world where he's happy. So, the final thoughts on the disk drive. I say as I hold up a 64 because I don't have a disk drive. I don't know, like, before I found out the disk drive was actually a thing, I actually kept questioning what this thing was supposed to be, which was part of the reason why I made this video, was to kind of help explain that and explain why we don't have that. I kind of feel bad for questioning why it looks so funny, because like, you have little holes right here. You notice these? That's why it looks so weird down there. I'm gonna admit, like, I made myself sad in the process of. I'm not sad now, I've gotten over it. In the process of making the script for it, though, I got pretty sad. Like, I'm pretty sure when I went to sleep that night, I had dreams about a ghost-like Nintendo64 DiskDrive. That was a pretty weird dream. You know, what can you do? That was a long time ago. There's nothing we really could do to fix it. Like I said earlier, though, I am confident that there's probably a universe out there where it did succeed, and you know, we have all these great games and all these great expansions. We had our Zelda. I don't want to say that because I don't know if we probably would have had it or not. Probably, because I know because of that's why it was probably delayed so much.